Hello, and welcome to the Atomic Lizards podcast. It's time for our Now Playing series, where we look at the newest movies and TV shows currently playing or streaming. I'm Miranda, the film fanatic.
I'm Udu, the de facto film expert.
And I'm Dan, the kaiju extraordinaire.
On today's episode of Now Playing, we'll be discussing Marvel's Thunderbolts.
Everyone deserves a second shot, and after finding themselves ensnared in a death trap, 7 disillusioned cast-offs must embark on a dangerous mission that will force them to confront the darkest corners of their past.
Thunderbolts is the newest Marvel film. It is the 36th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film was directed by Jake Schreier from a screenplay by Eric Pearson and Joanna Kylo, and stars an ensemble cast featuring Florence Pugh, Sebastian Stan, Wyatt Russell, Olga Kurylenko, Louis Pullman, Geraldine Viswanathan, Chris Bauer, Wendell Pierce, David Harbour, Hannah John Kamen, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
This episode will have spoilers, so go watch it if you haven't yet. Now let's get started. What are your initial thoughts on Thunderbolts?
So, I was very pleasantly surprised by this one. In the lead up to the movie's release and throughout the marketing campaign and everything, I mean, there's always a baseline of interest for me as the podcast's main MCU stan, and as just always, I've always been I've always been a superhero / comic book movie media whatever fan, regardless of anything. When I was like a kid, like Hellboy came out, and like I love that. Just so many different examples, so many different things. I'm not going to get into all that, and probably mentioned that before and stuff like that. But so I've always enjoyed that kind of thing and that in this genre and all that. So there's always a baseline of interest here. And with Marvel, I've been a fan of the MCU. I haven't been a Marvel hater. I've been able to acknowledge that it's had ups and downs for sure, and definitely some problems, especially as of late. But I've still, for the most part, at least found some enjoyment in the movies. But that being said, I wasn't sure how to feel about this one because of all the potential stories that they could have done or that they could have, pursued. I feel like, especially after Endgame, I feel like they really dropped the ball in so many different regards. I feel like they should have focused more on kind of like the aftermath of all of that, and they kind of skipped past all of that, and they just could have done so much more. They should have done so many things. They should have not done some things. Secret Invasion. But, so I was like, I don't know how to feel about this one. I guess, we'll see. And, man, it came out pretty dang good. Yeah, I really liked this one. It was way better than I was expecting. I didn't expect it to be bad or anything, but it feels like a genuine film and not like just a Marvel movie. Like, it definitely still has the Marvelness for sure. Don't get me wrong, but it definitely had way more filmic properties that you don't typically associate with a Marvel movie. It had thematic content. It had something to say. It wasn't necessarily the deepest thing ever, but it had something to say. That's crazy. Not to like completely crap on the MCU, but yeah, it's just shocking to me that after 17 years, they finally made a movie that genuinely can be seen as like cinema, I guess. Again, don't get me wrong, there are still people who will probably disagree with that statement, and I don't 100% say it. Like, this is not the MCU's The Batman yet, for sure. Not only just like, the cinematography here is leagues and bounds above the rest of the MCU, but it's not Greg Fraser, and it's not The Batman, and just a lot of other things. But yeah, so I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Really liked the cast. Visually, again, just thought it was great. And they did practical stunts. What? It's crazy. A lot of cool things here, but I'll shut up now so you guys can talk. So, Dan, what did you think of Thunderbolts ***?
Yeah, man. Much like you, I was also really surprised by this. I actually ended up really liking this movie. Granted, I kind of didn't have too many expectations for it. I thought Marvel essentially trying their hand at doing their version of the Suicide Squad was interesting to say the least. But unlike the movie we got from my homies over at DC in 2016, what Feige and Co. have delivered is a pretty layered movie that deals with some pretty serious topics such as loneliness and depression, and, in my opinion, it's executed very well. The thing I liked most about Thunderbolts, though, was its characters. I feel like that's where this movie was at its strongest. I liked spending time with these characters. It was interesting to see how they dealt with or how they are dealing with the sins of their past. I liked the look we took into each of their psyches as we explored their regrets. Honestly, after seeing it on Friday at the time of this recording, the more I think about Thunderbolts asterisk, the more I start to like it. It does have its fair share of jokes to keep the mood light, which helps in some regards, but also, in my opinion, is slightly overplayed in others. I also like how the Thunderbolts were kind of like a reverse Suicide Squad, which was also something I wasn't expecting. Because, like, in Suicide Squad, you got this band of villains that are brought together by one person to, like, lead missions. But, like, in Thunderbolts, it's, like, kind of the reverse in a way. Because, like, the team of villains, one could argue, is brought together by accident. And their motivation is bringing down their leader, unlike in Suicide Squad, where the leader is the one giving them their orders, you know? So I thought that was interesting. That's not what I was expecting from this movie, but yeah, all in all, I really liked Thunderbolts. I thought it was a nice change of pace from the usual MCU formula, and I felt that it worked really well for the story that it was trying to tell. I would recommend this one, and I think it deserves to be up there with some of the MCU's best. That being said, what about you, Miranda? How are you feeling about Thunderbolts?
Well, in classic me fashion, I'm just gonna read my letterbox review to you guys. It's not a deep review, but my review says, if this came out like 7 years ago, I'd probably be all about this one. 2018 me is happy that Ghost is still alive. So that's my letterbox review. Overall, this movie was okay. Like, it has an interesting concept, and I like Elena as a character. I think she's very interesting. I like Ghost. I'm just not on the hype train anymore for Marvel after Guardians 3 came out and was amazing. I kind of went into this one with no expectations, and it met above my like ground level of what Marvel movies are. I think there's some interesting concepts going on in here. But yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily have a full on emotional connection to this movie in the same way that I have with previous Marvel movies. I think that's just because I'm falling out of my MCU like passion, I guess. But I think all the actors did good. There was some funny bits. I liked the more serious bits. I didn't know what was going to happen at all. So I was pleasantly surprised while watching. But that's my initial thoughts. I guess we can dive into our discussion points a bit more. So, what did you guys think about the themes of loneliness and depression throughout this movie? Or mental health in general?
Yeah, that's a good question because once again, it's just not something I was expecting this movie to handle. And I felt that it handled it really well. Like the way that the characters like talk to each other and like I remember there's a scene in the movie where Yelena is talking to her father and then she's like, I don't do anything. I go on my phone and I just scroll and I think about, what am I doing with my life? That's real. There's people out there that really do have those thoughts, and I thought it was a really like not nice thing, but it was interesting to see the way the movie tackled those issues that real people do deal with. And once again, it's just not something that I was expecting out of a superhero movie. And it's always nice when you get these more genre specific films and you're especially the superhero genre where it's mainly just dealing about action and fighting villains and Easter eggs and whatnot. It's always nice to get these movies that really do talk about real topics like this. And just the way they handled it was very well done. But it's not even just that scene. There's like multiple different instances because our main quote unquote villain in the movie is Sentry. Now, Sentry is somebody in the movie, it's explained that he was like, he was on drugs for a while, addicted to drugs. He's dealt with loneliness and depression and whatnot. And now I don't really know what Sentry's powers are. I was always under the assumption that he was like Marvel's Superman, but like he's more like just based off of this movie, he's like way more than just Marvel's Superman because like I mean, yeah, he can fly and he's invulnerable, but his powers seem to be like slightly different from Superman's. Like he has telepathy and ESP, and well, I think it's just telepathy. What is it when you can like control things with your mind? Is that ESP or is that because telepathy is when
The
you can
Force?
yeah, the Force. Yeah, what's the Force?
Isn't it telekinesis?
Telekinesis. There we go, Udi. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he
The
has
Force.
yeah, the
That's not
Force.
how the Force works.
We don't know. It could.
Yeah. But anyway, he has like telekinesis, which is kind of cool actually. But he also has this thing where if you like touch him, he can like enter your psyche and like look into your past. And we see that with all of these different characters. Like we see that with Yelena, we see that with US Agent or Wyatt Russell's character. I think he's still called US Agent in the movie. I feel like that's where the movie somewhat shines and like showing these like difficult situations that these characters like the one that sticks out to me the most for some reason and I'm not sure why, but like just US Agents little like psychic adventure with Sentry. That one just really sticks out to me because like you think of him because he like first appeared in Falcon and the Winter Soldier and he was supposed to replace Captain America, Steve Rogers. And they kind of set him up as a villain in that show because like he kind of goes off the wall and like murders somebody in like a crowd full of people. And to just take that character that's just meant to be like somewhat like the evil Captain America at first and actually show like the issues that he's going through in his life in dealing with trying to be a father and not really paying attention to his kid and his wife leaving him as a result. Like I don't know, I just found that super interesting. And once again, it's just not something I was like, you're going to hear that a lot from me, but it's really something that I was not expecting from this movie. And of course, we got to talk about the big scene at the end where, everybody comes together with Sentry because, Sentry kind of goes and a little bit off the wall. Well, he doesn't go a little bit, he goes way off the wall there at the end. And, sometimes people just need a hug. And that's essentially what happens with Sentry there at the end. And it was what I felt was a very beautiful scene. So once again, I really liked the way that the movie handled these themes.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think this subject matter, I would say that a lot of people, probably even most people, can, at least to some degree, relate to these themes and these topics. And it can be difficult to find the right balance to not, make it too depressing and not too sad, but also not make it seem like you're making light of it or like, you're not taking it seriously enough and stuff like that. So it's definitely like it's hard to find the right balance, I guess. And I think they did a really good job here. It was still, it still had a decent amount of that sort of MCU snarky humor and, whatever, blah, 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 quippy stuff. But they definitely, for once, actually let emotional and tense and just like quiet moments just like actually breathe and have their moment. And that was really, really nice because this movie, especially given, the subject matter and everything, definitely needed that sort of time to breathe and to let the subject matter shine. And I think they did a really good job of being respectful of that. Obviously they still do like the MCU quips. It's just part of the brand. And even aside from that, I think there was a good amount of jokes that were fun because they were related to like the character that was saying them or getting joked on or getting teased. Had something to do with like their history or whatever, but it like a lot of it was kind of like dark humor, which is like fun. It worked with this movie in particular and the whole tone of everything. And I think the best example of that was the one where it's like during the third act and they're trying to find Sentry and Yelena in like the sort of nightmare world, the void, you have to go through like your worst, most traumatic memories in the void, and so they're like, "Oh, you found us," and then Bucky's like, "Oh yeah, I'm totally fine." And it's just like, I mean, yeah, oof, that's rough, but as it's kind of like an in joke because it's like, oh yeah, we know that Bucky's had a really awful past as the Winter Soldier and all that, so just one of those things. But overall, I think that the loneliness and depression themes are handled very well. I think they found an interesting way, and I don't know if this is a thing from the comics or if like they kind of took inspiration from other things to like make it look like this. But I even thought the look of like the Void Century and the Void World and all that was very interesting. I liked that they made the sort of void dreams and stuff like that. They had them. They were like sets. They were literally were just like little sets, and they didn't try to like mask that at all. They like kind of just like literally went into that aesthetic, especially like in Yelena's dream where she's in the forest and then she like runs. She tries to get away and bumps into just like a wall, and then there's like another part where they're like going through, I think, as a group and trying to escape, and there's just like a painted wall with like other things going on and stuff like that in the background. So I don't know, it's just very cool how they did all of that. But sorry, I got kind of on a tangent there. But yeah, so like they did a really great job of the visuals dealing with these themes, and also like these individuals that are troubled in some extent and kind of memeing on it because of the 2016 Suicide Squad movie Damaged. um Coming together and supporting one another. You get shots of like when US agent is holding up the wall, and you get like a close up of their hand as they're all working together to push it up and supersede the crushing wall. And also like in that visual that Dan brought up where they're all hugging Sentry as they're trying to get him to escape the void and come out the other side. And yeah, I just think from all points, like the writing, the visuals, I think they did a really great job of tackling these themes and making them feel just as important as they should be. And especially in such dark times, it's definitely nice to see something like this out of one of the biggest movie franchises in the world still. So yeah, it was very, very well done. But what about you, Miranda? What did you think?
I think this movie handled the loneliness and depression, mental health in a well way. Like, it's not the first time they've like dived into more of the like mental health side thing, because you had Tony with his like PTSD, but they didn't really expand on that much. They kind of said, hey, here's this thing, and then never talked about it again. Moon Knight deals with like Moon Knight having a system and his like the three different versions of Moon Knight, and they address that, and I think they did that well too. So to see this one, I'm like, okay, they've kind of touched on these themes, but they, I think, handled it well. I think that they could have pushed it more, but it is a PG-13 Marvel's movie. They're not doing exactly the best work, or hadn't been doing the best work previously, so I see why they maybe didn't push these topics a bit more. But I think having Elena have that connection with Bob while they're escaping the vault was a nice moment that kind of like helped build up their like connection that would later have Elena go into the shadow world to the void to like go see all of her darkest memories and everything to find Bob. And I'm glad that the team like went into that to find him. From my understanding, it's like the movie's trying to say you need a community, you need a support system, you need your friends. Like, it sucks to be alone and to go home, scroll on your phone, go to bed, wake up, go to work, go home, scroll on your phone, and just get bombarded by just like everything that is going on at the moment. It's a lot to handle, but like this movie saying, "Hey, like, it's okay. Your friends can help you, your family can help you." Which I think is a much needed message right now, because like community is extremely important to have. So I like that aspect of it. I was not expecting the theme of like mental health, loneliness, depression, etc., to be in this movie at all. So that came totally out of left field. But I think it helped with creating like a impactful story. Otherwise, probably this one, at least for me, would have gotten lost in all the other Marvel action movies. I think it was something that the MCU needs to explore a bit more, and like maybe they can go into this stuff in more depth later on. But I guess we'll see. I don't know what is lining up for the rest of the MCU right now, but it's definitely an interesting way to bring the team together, or specifically bring Elena to Bob and Captain Russia, I don't know his real name, together.
I like Captain Russia. Let's go with that.
Well, yeah, we got anti-Captain America, we got Captain Russia, you got Ghost and Elena. Oh, and then Bucky, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, if you don't know who Bucky is, you miss some stuff. But yeah, so I guess
Sorry, I just wanted to touch on the things you're talking about, and yeah, I agree. I think the focus on like the support group aspect of the film was also very well done. Even just seeing kind of the contrast from the beginning, where it is just Yelena alone, like getting home in her apartment or whatever, like scrolling on her phone, like just drinking alone and not, being like Dan said, getting caught in the cycle of life, really just, you know, punching in, punching out, like having a few hours to yourself and then just like getting back to it and like not being able to find yourself escaping that cycle and what that does to you mentally and stuff like that. And the contrast between that and like the ending where like she's the one leading the charge. She was feeling all this pain and all these feelings throughout the course of the film, from the very beginning. And then she's the one leading the charge to, tell Bob, hey, you're not alone. You have us, you have people that care about you, that need you, that want you around. And it was not only helpful for Bob, but it was healing for her. And yeah, I think that part especially is really important for kind of like one of the main takeaways of the film of even if it feels like you can't escape the darkness, like there's always going to be people near you that are, friends of yours, family, some sort of loved one that can be there for you and will care about you and all of that. So yeah, just a really important thing to take away and think about from the film.
it is nice that Elena like kind of was the one that to take charge and go after Bob and like find him, and I think that is important to her character. I only know her from the like Black Widow movie, and this I have no idea what she goes through in the comics, but it's nice to see like that element incorporated into her story in the MCU. And I like that she's like, okay, I'm feeling this way, he's feeling this way. I'm just gonna step into the void. I don't know what is gonna happen, but I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna try to help him, which I really liked seeing. It's really cool. But kind of jumping from that to the void, I wanted to talk about like the special effects. I mean, it's already kind of been touched on when you're in the void and you're in your like torture rooms of your worst memories. They kind of looked like sets. And I thought that was really cool, really clever. And I like that even though like Elena runs into the wall, she like drops from the ceiling, or they break through the floor and they're actually sideways. I liked that mechanic of the using perspective and shifting things and switching things around to make an interesting like little like maze or puzzle. And then I liked the silhouetting of Bob when he is the void, and how you can really only see his eyes, but you can still see like his hair move, and it's not like they didn't like paint him out. You can still see in some shots like his face. Like I don't know what kind of lighting techniques they did on him or if it's in post production, but I just thought that was really cool and something that I don't know if I've seen before. I know Marvel has tried to like make really cool like lighting effects like in Thor Love and Thunder. They did that really cool fight scene where they like swung cameras around and took a bunch of pictures with different lightings and like meshed that together. So I'm not sure if they're doing some form of that technique with like how they made the Void or Bob look. when he's all silhouetted. But I thought that was really cool, and then the effects of, like, shadow overtaking, New York City. I liked it did make me think of Godzilla and atomic bombs and that, so that was kinda not fun to think about. And then when, like, the helicopter went down in New York City and they're, like, saving people, that also reminded me about real life events, so that was not fun to experience either, so, um that's a little side note, I guess. That's not really on topic. But anyways, what did you guys think about like the effects of the like silhouetting of Bob or like his superpowers or like the way they like showed that on screen with like the effects or like the force field around him? Like did you guys find that interesting?
On the topic of like Sentry and his void powers, first of all, shame on you, Thunderbolts trailer editors, for showing that in the trailer. It would have been way cooler to have experienced that entire segment, like not knowing about it at all. But no, you just had to go put it in the trailer, and like, I mean, it was still insane to experience in the theater. But this is why I don't really like to watch movie trailers anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. You tell him, Dan. I agree. Like, because they did it before with other movies where, like, they cut out things like in No Way Home, they cut out, like, characters and scenes. Like, they could have just not shown the effect and it still would have worked, but nah.
Yeah, they could have just shown like Sentry, like not in his shadow form, but just regular Sentry, like floating above. But I guess that would have revealed his suit. But they already revealed that, you know. That's whatever. Just trailers suck nowadays. They reveal too much.
What trailers did y'all watch? Because I don't remember any of that.
This was like I think the second trailer.
Oh.
It might have been trailer number 2, but I don't remember if they showed it during theatrical when you go to the theater. So
Yeah, I think it was the
Interesting.
second trailer. And I think, I don't even remember if I finished watching it, but I just remember for like the first time seeing the sort of like shadowing effect where like someone gets shadowed into the ground and I was like, whoa, I'm like, what is that? Who is that? What? And yeah, I agree.
now that I think about it, that might have even been in the first trailer.
Maybe. I don't even
Yeah.
remember honestly, but yeah,
Well,
I
still.
agree. They shouldn't have shown that.
No, they should not have shown that because that would have been insane. Like seeing that without knowing about it. But I digress. Yeah, so the Void was very I mean, if I'm being completely honest, I was more invested in the other themes of Thunderbolts, like in the themes of like the what we were just talking about before this. I was more invested in that part of the movie than I was really the Void, because while the way they did the Void was interesting, and I liked the way that they did it, it's an idea that I've seen in other movies before. So I wasn't that impressed by it, I guess, is if that's even the right word, but it was still done very well, so but yeah, I guess one aspect of the Void that kind of stuck out to me was Yelena's memory, where she essentially tricked a friend of hers into getting killed. There's a little detail in that scene that stuck with me during my first watch, and it's the part where like Yelena starts running away from the scene because she knows what's about to happen, and then like you see her like flinch as the gunshot goes off. Like I thought that was really well done because that really stuck with me, and it's just like, yeah, I can only imagine like how you're feeling in that situation. It's like, oh no, like something really bad is about to happen that I'm responsible for. I don't want to be around when it happens, but yeah, I have no choice. I have to like listen to it as it's happening. Like that was really well done. But yeah, the like being in the actual Void itself, like, once again, it's an idea that I feel has been explored in other media and I've seen it executed in other media, but it was still well done here. Now, once again, everything else beforehand was pretty crazy.
Just to add something real quick to that scene you were just talking about, I think another aspect to it too, and not to get like too deep, but one of the most like painstaking moments of that scene for me, and like the one that like was choking me up was I'm pretty sure it was in that exact part of that scene. He like gets to the point where like she's trying to like defend or like protect her younger self, and like she's like, no, like you're just a child, like you don't, you shouldn't be doing this or dealing with this. And it's just like, oh my god, like just it's such an interesting manifestation and like representation of how like your inner child can still have all this trauma, and as an adult you can like look back to like moments like that and see that maybe you shouldn't have been going through this or that, and you're trying to heal that part of yourself, and sometimes you can't, but it's just like acknowledging that you shouldn't have been dealing with that at that age, and how awful that was. And oh god, that was a really rough part, but very well done, I think.
Yeah, like the whole thing with like Sentry in his void form, just like essentially Thanos snapping people, but not really because I guess technically he wasn't killing anyone, but still, like just essentially just Thanos snapping people was crazy. Like I'm thinking of the part where Red Guardian saves that little girl and he's like, "You're okay," and then just gone. It's like what just happened? Like it was crazy. Like that was really cool. And the only thing, honestly, like seeing New York get covered in like just that entire sequence in New York. Okay, I'm gonna bring this up. It was bound to happen sooner or later. This is in a shared universe. What were Spider-Man and Daredevil up to during that? Just wondering. Like,
It was Cinco de Mayo and they were having mimosas or margaritas, sorry.
Spoiler. Well, no, never mind. I was gonna say something stupid, but y'all
yeah,
haven't
don't
watched
don't spoil
Daredevil yet, so
Daredevil
I
Born Again
can't
yet.
tell you. Anyways, he's got emotional problems going on as typical Daredevil. I have no idea where this would slot in with that show, but I don't know where he is, and I feel like okay, actually on this topic, they're like the Avengers are dead, they're not here. What about
Yeah.
Spider-Man, Daredevil, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop? I assume she took over the moniker. Yeah, War Machine. I don't know what Rhodes is up to. I'm not sure what Sam's up to either because I didn't watch Captain America 4. But like She-Hulk's around. Like there's this other superheroes. So what are they talking about? There's no Avengers. Or like do they just want a superhero team? Like Ant-Man and the Wasp are still around, right?
Sure,
Like
Black
am
Panther.
I missing
Yeah.
something? Yeah, Black
Well, I
Panther.
will say this, and this might be because you haven't seen the newest Captain America, but in that movie, the president does want Sam Wilson to rebuild the Avengers.
Oh, okay. So am I missing something or am I not missing something?
Well, like I wouldn't say you're missing something, but it is explained in
Okay.
Brave New World that Sam Wilson is going to start rebuilding the Avengers, and that's even a topic that's brought up in Thunderbolts after credits scene.
Yeah, it seems like Bucky and Sam's got some relationship problems they need to work through together with, like the help of like a counselor or something. I don't know what happened, but they should probably talk about that.
But yeah, just I mean, because yeah, like I understand the reason why like Spider-Man can't show up in this movie because film rights, Sony, and all that jazz. But seriously, like where was he during all that chaos happening in New York? You're telling me Spider-Man wasn't around like saving people? Like if he's still in New York, like come on. But like I said, that's besides the point. And I know the reason why Spider-Man couldn't be there. But yeah,
He has a cold.
That didn't stop the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man
I
from
was just about to bring that up. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
but
didn't
it's not
stop
that
him.
one
Yeah.
though.
But just to go back to what Miranda was saying, to what you're saying, Miranda, even as like I'm mostly caught up. I've missed a few shows at this point, but I wouldn't say anything that's like super super consequential necessarily to the overall story. And it feels weird because it does feel weird that they're like, there's no heroes, like there's no Avengers, blah blah blah. And it's like, I mean, they're still out there everywhere. Like it does. Like I mean, again, like with Spider Man, I mean, I would think we would assume that even though like everyone forgot who Peter Parker was, like he's still out there being Spider Man. Like he's still doing Spider Man things. So like he should still be out there. Captain Marvel should still be out there. I guess I don't know what to make of what happened in Secret Invasion with Rhodey. So like, I guess he should be out there, but I don't know. I guess I don't know. I hope that they just decanonize that stupid show. Sorry. And yeah, like all the other heroes you guys are saying, like they're still out there. So, like, it doesn't really make sense that they keep bringing this up of like, oh, there's no Avengers because they brought up that point in Brave New World, like Dan said. But again, even in that movie, it was like, I mean, I guess like there's not an official team because there hasn't been a movie in a while, but like the individual heroes are still there, and they're all like supposed to be complying with like the Sokovia Accords, at least as of like Brave New World. So it's like they should still be there. It's just that I don't know. It doesn't really make sense in the context of even this movie. Like it doesn't make sense that they're building this up to be like such a big problem, and at least they haven't done a good job of illustrating this thing because I also feel like if it was truly the case where just the public, I guess the general public felt that, oh, where are our heroes, they're gone, we don't have any saviors or anyone here to help us anymore. Like if that was genuinely how the general public felt, I feel like there'd be an uprising of supervillains being like, oh hey, the heroes are gone, let's take over everything. And it's not happening. So I don't know, it just feels weird. It feels like they're trying to rework things because they didn't do a good job of building up a consistent narrative across the different movies, and they're trying to rush into Doomsday and Secret War. So they're trying to make up a crisis that isn't actually a crisis and just saying that it is. I don't know. But I don't remember if you said yeah, you said your thoughts on like the void effects in the void rooms, right, Miranda?
Yeah, liked them. They were cool. I think they did it well. And I wasn't really expecting it, so like the sets looked really nice and very like real, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very nice.
Yeah, it's nice to see real things in movies and not just blue screens or green screens. Like I'm here for it. Use the technology, but you got to balance it out with like practical effects and stuff too.
Completely agree. Couldn't agree more.
That's just how I think the technology should be used, and it seems like many disagree with that, but this movie will stand better in the age of time than The Flash, even though I was defending the CGI artist in that one, but that movie, not great in terms of CGI, and you can tell that they, like, took time on Thunderbolts and like was I'm gonna make some practical sets. We're gonna have practical costumes. Like it's gonna look real. And then with the color grading and stuff and everything being so gray toned, which I also think helps with the message of like feeling alone. It's kind of really isolating, but like I think using those like desaturated colors also within the void world and the normal world worked really well too. It was very nice to see them actually try something clever, I guess, in a way, and not just the same old Marvel we've seen before.
Yeah, that's a good shout out on the gray color grading and the isolationism of that feeling that you get as a result of that. Just to go back to like the void special effects and stuff real quick, and just to give because I talked about it earlier, but just to give a couple of final thoughts. Um, yeah, I agree. The void sentry, the way that he was painted out was really really cool. I don't know if I can recall another movie that did that same sort of like exact effect where because at first when like he showed up, I was like, "Whoa, he's like completely drawn out." But I thought it was gonna look different. But it really did look like they captured like 4K footage of him and then just painted him out. Like it wasn't like drawn or anything. Like you could see like strands of hair and stuff like that. It was really interesting to like see how they did it, and like it's still so crisp and it looks real. But he's just literally empty space. So that was really really cool. It did kind of give me the vibe of like the typical kind of movie where it's like the character is just facing the evil, like dark version of themselves. Like even in Scott Pilgrim, like he's facing like basically the anti Scott, and like that's exactly the vibe that I got from this one. Like visually, like this is really really a cool effect and everything like that. But like he's just like the anti Bob, which I mean again makes sense like thematically and all of that. But just I had that thought and I was like that's kind of funny. But yeah, and then the shadow effect where like someone gets like snapped into the void was like insane. That was a really really cool effect, and as we said before, they shouldn't have shown that. That would have been really really cool to just like see in like as like a surprise thing, I guess, in the movie theater without knowing what that was going to look like. But it was still cool. It's still very, very cool. And I mean, yeah, the moment with the little girl was freaking shocking, and like obviously it's by design, but yeah, and especially at that moment because like you don't know if they're dying or not until like Yelena jumps in, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But yeah, and the practical sets thing again, very, very cool. I like when something can kind of lean into like a kind of like lo-fi thing, and like this kind of definitely did that. Where like obviously you can tell that it's a very, very expensive movie, but then they use sort of like the lo-fi, like, oh, these are literally just sets and stuff like that, and they look like sets, but that plays into like the story and everything. So it's just really cool.
Lo-fi, like lo-fi beats.
Lo-fi beats. Oh yeah. All right. 24/7 lo-fi beats. All right. Playing now. I'm just
In the
kidding.
void.
To study and
Yeah,
relax
study and
to.
relax to in the void. Yeah.
I'll study and chill out with Bob anytime. Maybe not in the void, but you know. But yeah, the last thing, I also just wanted to shout out that cool effect where like every time they went through like kind of an exit point, whether it was like a window or a door or like just like a wall they broke through, how like the perspective shifted and like it was different. Like I love that sort of thing. I think that's such a great and interesting way to capture like sort of like being in like a dream state or like going through different dreams and stuff like that. I had a very similar idea of doing something like that for a short film when I was in college, that I ended up not doing it because the scope of it was way too large for my budget, which was probably negative money, really. So didn't happen, but it was really cool to actually like, see on screen, be like, wow, that does work. It's really cool. It's probably not the first time that that's ever been shown. I mean, to some degree, even like Inception kind of did something vaguely similar, and I'm sure other movies have done something vaguely similar as well. But yeah, I just thought it was cool. It was a good way to represent them going to like different memories. I guess not really dreams, but like more like memories. But yeah, so I thought that was really cool. And one other last thing, sorry, because I just thought about this with Bob that I also really liked was part of his performance, where he just seems, he seems like friendly and chill for the most part when he's just Bob. But one aspect is like the eye twitching. Like so often you can see either one or both of his eyes to some degree are kind of twitching, or like it's the area around his eyes is kind of twitching as well. And you can tell that there's just a lot more going on internally with him as like part of that than he like lets on. Because like you'll be like, "Oh, are you okay?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." But like you can tell that there's definitely more going on internally, and you can tell by the way he's saying that he's like fine or he's okay that he's not. Yeah, I just thought that was a very interesting and very good performance decision on Lewis Pullman's part, because every time that happened, I noticed like the little twitch of his eye or the area around his eye, and it's like, oh man, like I don't know how he got that like perfect of like he had a good pace with it. It wasn't overly done, but it wasn't done to the point where like you hardly notice. It was like something that was noticeable, and like it would happen more as like the movie went on, where he became like more and more like depressed and like fell into the void and all that. And so I thought that was a really good touch. But
Yeah, I just want to give my quick thoughts on Sentry real quick. I liked Sentry. I thought he was a very interesting character. They initially set Sentry up as kind of like a homemade superhero. Like they want to make a superhero. And that's essentially what the Sentry Project in the movie was. And you take somebody who's just a normal guy and you give him the powers of Superman, and then it's like, I'm a god now. And that's actually a point in the movie where he's talking with Julia Louis Dreyfus's character, and he's like, I'm a god now. Like, why should I listen to you and whatnot? And that made for a somewhat interesting antagonist because, like, deep down, Bob isn't a bad guy. Like, he's not inherently evil, but with all the experiences that he went through and whatnot, and then essentially just giving him the powers of being a god, like, that's gonna twist his mind there. And then, like, I don't even know, like, what's going on there with his, like, void shadow form. Like, I don't know if that's a thing from the comics, but that was also something where it's like, once again, he's not inherently doing that. It's something that he's kind of just letting this darkness overtake him. And it's up to the Thunderbolts to get him out of that so he can be his true self again. So I thought that was interesting to do, like, as a somewhat antagonist.
Yeah, that's a really great thing to bring up, and I totally forgot about that. It is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, you're right in the part that you're talking about with like how, he's like just a regular old guy, just a normal guy getting through life, and he gets like the powers of a god where like he's invincible and all this other stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's like, what does that kind of power do to someone? And like obviously it changes them because it's like they're invincible. They can't be hurt even by some of the strongest people around and whatnot. So it's like that, of course it's going to warp your perception and your reality and all of that, because you're going to think so much differently about yourself and what you can do and stuff like that. But I do think that also brings up another really good point of showing how much of a difference the influence that someone else can have on you, especially in a weakened emotional and mental state. Because in like the lead up to that, it's Val who is talking him up and trying to make him seem like, oh, you're so perfect, oh, you're like a god, and anyone who denies that is her trying to hurt you, and they're not good for you, and blah blah blah. And so it's like showing how a bad support, or like a bad friend, just someone who is a bad influence on you, can affect you and change you in a way it's really detrimental, like for yourself. And then showing the opposite of how, yeah, there's people out there that when you're in like a bad negative state of mind, that will take advantage of that and will use you, and can just like make you turn into someone that you're not, but and will bring out the darkest parts of you. But then you have other people who just want to be there for you and to support you and help you be who you are, and bring out that part of you that might be stuck in that feeling of the mental anguish and all of that. So I think it did a really good job of showing both of those sides, with Val, being the bad influence, and the Thunderbolts being the good influence, where like they genuinely care about Bob and want to make sure he's fine, and that. So that was a really good point to bring up. I kind of forgot about that, and we haven't even talked about Val, so I think that was good. But yeah, just wanted to add that in. And I guess now that she's part of the conversation, how did you guys feel about her memory? Did you feel like, because I mean, these are all everyone's like worst, most painful memories, basically. And while we haven't necessarily gotten like a ton of backstory on Val, like you can tell from the few appearances that she's had that she's not a great person. And that's always kind of interesting in the sense of like, well, how did this person get to be like this, I guess. And so we don't like fully get a ton of exploration into her character, but we do get a pretty essential memory. So how did you guys feel about that memory in the void for her?
I'm gonna be honest, I don't really remember Val's memory. What did it go like again?
Oh, it was her as a little kid, and it was like her dad was like in trouble with presumably some sort of guy, and like he gets shot in front of her.
Oh, yeah, I remember now. So my question is, did she have the same experience that Magneto did when he was a child, if you catch my drift?
Hmm. I don't think it was that. Like I don't think it was
Okay, you
that
don't think it was
time
that? Because I
period.
thought it was that initially.
I wasn't sure at first, but like she's not that old. She would definitely have to be older. Cuz like I'm pretty sure this movie takes place in like 2025.
True. I was gonna say Julia Louis-Dreyfus does look pretty old though, but yeah, if like she was young in the
Not
40s,
that old though.
she would probably she would probably look way older. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it was more like 70s, 80s ish, where maybe 60s, I guess, but like somewhere in that range where she's like a kid. So
I was way off then. I was way because I thought it was dealing with that. So then, what do you think that was then, Udi? If it wasn't, you know,
I mean, I think it was just I'm assuming there's some sort of maybe like actual genuine historical sort of significance to that, like a cultural thing. Maybe not, I don't know, but I mean, my assumption was just like they were presumably like a lower income. Like I don't know if they were immigrants. I mean, I would say that didn't seem like it took place in the U.S. So presumably they are. They're from another country, but yeah, like presumably like a lower income family, and like the dad got involved with the wrong people, and
Ah.
so just she's been kind of caught up in all of this since from a young age against her will, maybe maybe that being sort of like the thing of she didn't really have much of a choice because ever since she was a kid she got kind of pulled into this dark underbelly, and uh that's what shaped her into the person that she is now.
Yeah, that
But
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah, that was just my read on it from my one viewing of it. So I could be totally off, and I haven't looked into it, but I figured I'd bring it up because I think my one thought too was, I mean, she is for all intents and purposes the antagonist of the film. Sentry is just kind of like, in a way, like her henchman, I guess, but she's like the uh, evil mastermind. Um, and I was kind of curious when we did get them. I'm like, oh, what is this going to be? And it's kind of curious that our one of our like our main hero Elena is shown in being accessory to a child murder, literally like dragging her out to the forest to get shot. But then the main antagonist of the film is just shown in a moment where she's just the victim, like she's just a helpless child victim in this horrible thing that happens to her and her family, and she's just there to watch basically. Uh, so I think that was kind of interesting framing because like I know that technically like the heroes of this movie aren't really like supposed to be the good guys, but we're following them and we're sympathetic to them, and like we it's established that they're decent people even though they do bad things and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting to me like the framing of those like memories and stuff like that.
Did you have anything to add to I don't remember the name of Julia Louis Dreyfus's character. Was it Val?
Val, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Miranda. Did you have anything to add on to Val's character, or are you ready to move on?
Uh, I mean, not really. I was confused about who she was and why she's here and what's going on, but I think that's just because I'm not up to date on the MCU stuff. In terms of her like little torture memory, I thought it was interesting to see like a bit of like, oh, okay, this person has suffered a bit or a lot, probably. Um, we don't really know. They didn't really expand on it. It clearly shook her up when she was talking to Bob in the room that reminded me of the room that's in Venom 3. Um, but I think Val as a character is very manipulative. She definitely manipulates Bob and uses him to for her own good. She does that with the Thunderbolts being like, "Okay, y'all work for me. I want y'all to kill each other." They end up working together, and then she pulls her little media stunt. I do like Elena's little line is like, "We own you now." Yeah, I don't really know where they're going with her, but it was kind of interesting to see a bit about her backstory, I guess. Yeah, that's basically all I gotta say about Val.
One last thing about Val, and that's not really about her. How about that preview of Wendell Pierce in this movie, huh, Dan? Huh? Huh?
Oh,
Huh?
yeah. Yeah, 'cause it was funny because when I was watching the movie, I was like, "That looks like Wendell Pierce. Is that Perry White?" And then sure enough, I was like, "Oh my god, it's Perry White." So that was cool I had no idea he was gonna be in this movie, so that was cool.
Soon to be Perry White, coming July
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was a good addition to the cast.
I
He didn't really
agree.
have like a ton to say or to do, I guess, but he was good. I mean, he's always
Yeah.
good. So yeah, just figured I'd bring that up because I thought that was funny because I forgot that he got cast as Perry White. So when you brought that, I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and like I said, I had no idea he was even in this movie, so that was a nice surprise. But all right, we've talked about the heroes, we've talked about the villains. Let's talk about the heroes a little bit more. Did you guys have a favorite Thunderbolts? If so, who and why?
It's Ghost and then Elena. But it's Ghost. I like Ghost. I know some people didn't really like Ant-Man and the Wasp. It's a interesting movie, but I really liked Ghost and I liked her story in that. So just seeing her on screen again was really cool. I wish they could have expanded more about her. And I think at one point, one of them's like, "Oh, it's the infamous Ghost." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? She was in one movie 7 years ago and then never mentioned again. What are you talking about?"
They did the Doctor Strange 2 thing of mentioning history that happened off screen that we will never see. So,
Well, that's lame and boring,
agreed.
and they should do better. Whatever, it's fine. I don't really care that much. I was just like, "What are you talking about?" So I just like seeing her again, and then Elena is a great character. She's really cool. I think, or at least I hope they can expand more with her character in interesting ways. But yeah, I guess those are my two favorite, mainly just because they're cool. Ghost's got cool powers. Everyone else, well, okay. So it goes Ghost and Elena tied for like top seating, and then Bob and Captain Russia are tied, and then everyone else is at the bottom of the list. Not that you asked for my full ranking of the Thunderbolts, but that's what it is.
Interesting. All right. I dig it.
I don't really like anti Captain America. He's really annoying. And I've never really cared for Bucky. He's fine. And I think that's the whole team. So there we go.
Gotcha. Good picks. Ghost. I will admit, like Ghost, I always felt she was a pretty tragic character in Ant-Man, and I felt bad
She
her in that
is.
movie. Yeah, so it was nice to see her again in this film.
Definitely.
But what about you, Udi? Did you have a favorite Thunderbolt? If so, who and why?
I think it's fair to say that my favorite, if I had to choose one, would be Yelena. I mean, I think it's a little unfair because she's basically the main character. Like obviously, a lot of the other characters get moments to shine, and some characters get more time to speak, and other things like that, like Walker and even Red Guardian to an extent. And Bob plays a big part of the whole movie. But I think Yelena was my favorite for sure. I think just from the start of the movie, like, well, one, she's just a fun character to watch. I mean, you can't go wrong with Florence Pugh, but she's just a fun character to watch, and it's fun to see her kind of toe the line between being kind of in a gray area. She's not necessarily bad, but she's not great either. And like trying to like grapple with that aspect of herself in this movie where like she's kind of acknowledging that, like, yeah, I've done a lot of bad things and stuff like that, but I want to try to do better, and I want to do other stuff and not be doing this. Like, this isn't really a life to live. So like that was an interesting aspect. But yeah, she's also like funny, and it's just funny to like see her in moments like that, like in the Hawkeye show where she has her fun, moment with Kate Bishop, and they're like in her apartment, and like they're talking over mac and cheese, like that. That's fun. Or like in the elevator, and then here, where at the beginning she's like talking to the guys in the lab and all of that, like just fun little moments in between everything else. But then you also get like the moment with her and Red Guardian in the street, where it's just like pulling at your heartstrings, and it's like this really emotional and important moment for her, because again, like a big part of the movie is like her healing her inner child through like the trauma of everything that she experienced, and trying to come to terms with all of that. And big part of that is Red Guardian, because like for all intents and purposes he is her dad. So having that moment in the street with them was really really important, and a really good character moment for both of them, because it's like she just needs a family. She's looking for her family, and she needs a support group. She needs people there while she's dealing with all this and trying to find the meaning of it all. And then you have Red Guardian, who wants to be there. He wants to be part of our group as well, but he just doesn't feel like he's good enough, basically. And so he's chomping at the bit to have the opportunity, but he either hasn't really gotten a chance or doesn't feel like he's capable of doing a good job. But yeah, I think Yelena was definitely the best character in this movie, and my favorite of the bunch. I mean, I like Bucky as well, but at least in this movie, it's like you didn't really get like a ton of stuff with Bucky, and I mean, to a certain degree, it's like I mean, I don't know what else you could do except for just like reveal new events of things that he did or stuff like that, because we all know that he was just basically like an assassin on ice for decades and doing all these terrible things, killing all these other people and everything, and then kind of just became a character in the timeline of the MCU, like as the movies are coming out, and like developed a bit more, and then got back to being Bucky, but yeah, so I don't know. And I guess the other thing was like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like that was some good character development there as well. But at this point, it's like he's just like an MCU elder. So like it's cool to see him when he shows up, but there's not necessarily like a ton you can necessarily do with that character. I think at this point, maybe so. I mean, there's still a chance they could do more stuff with him, and obviously as long as he's willing to stay, they should keep him as long as it makes sense to like in the story. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Did you say who your favorite Thunderbolt character was, Dan?
I did not, but just real quick, I just wanted to comment. We do love Yelena. Um, what show did she appear in again? It was Hawkeye, right?
Yeah.
I always think back to that scene in Hawkeye where she's talking about the mac and cheese because she mentions like putting Tabasco sauce on the mac and cheese, and I've always wanted to try that. I haven't tried it yet, but
It's
I want to
pretty
try
decent.
it. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's like the superior way to eat it necessarily, but I always love putting hot sauce on stuff, so can't go wrong with
Yeah.
that.
I've always wanted.
Yeah, I mean, we get some hot sauce. I like Frank's Red Hots. What? It's not like taco hot sauce.
And it's kind
It's
of like a
more
tobacco
like
sauce.
wing
Or
sauce.
Tabasco sauce, I
Yeah,
mean, not tobacco.
yeah. uh, so I would recommend that. Either one is great. Added a little extra cheese to it.
Yeah.
Would
I'll have to
recommend.
try it. I'm gonna have to try that one day. But like I always, whenever I think of Yelena, I always think of I just always think of that scene. But yeah, good choices all around. But my favorite Thunderbolt, without a doubt, has to be Captain Russia, aka Red Guardian. I loved him in this movie. Like David Harbour just exudes this type of like excitement and energy. I remember I think there was like a review or whatever that said Red Guardian was the heart of the team. I don't know if I would go as far as to say that, but he's definitely like the most motivated out of all of them. He wants to bring this team together. He wants them to go on missions and whatnot. And even though like technically Red Guardian is kind of a bad character because like he essentially sold his daughter into this assassin group and led her to experience all this trauma and whatnot. But god dang it, I freaking love him in this movie. I just he's just great. I love Red Guardian. He was one of my favorite parts of this movie. I loved his energy. I loved his silliness. I would not recommend trying to brush your teeth with dishwasher soap as he did in the beginning of the movie. That is disgusting. I also deeply connected with the because when we first see Red Guardian, he's just like in his apartment or whatever, and like I think Yelena's visiting and she like rings his doorbell and he's like, I told you, leave on porch or whatever, because he like ordered something through DoorDash. I resonated with that because that's happened to me before where like order DoorDash or order delivery, specifically tell them to just leave it on porch, but they like ring the doorbell anyway. It's like just leave it on the porch. I really resonated with that. That was hilarious. And yeah, Red Guardian, without a doubt, my favorite character. I also really loved I don't know if I've said this before, but when it comes to superhero movies, I'm a sucker for like hero scenes, those generic scenes in superhero movies where the heroes go around saving people. I'm a sucker for those scenes. I love those scenes. And I love the scene in New York where Red Guardian is like saving people. Like that only made me like love his character even more, honestly. So yeah. Red Guardian, without a doubt, my favorite character.
I mean, again, kind of like how I brought up in my thoughts just a bit ago. Like he's just so ready to be a hero. Like that's all he wants. Like you can argue that it's not necessarily for the right reasons. Like I feel like it's kind of 50-50. Like he likes doing it. He likes being able to help, and he has a super soldier serum, even if it's like a crappy knockoff. But like he has it, so like he like wants to do stuff with it. And but like the other part of that is like he just likes like the fame and the the acclaim that comes with being like a hero and like a cherished public figure. but he also like wants to do good with it, and so as soon as like the civilians are in need, like it's just cool to see him like jump to action, like I gotta go help them. Like he doesn't even question it for a second, and that is really cool. And I agree. It might be cheesy or whatever, but it is nice to just see like these heroes that were supposed to be everyday heroes taking care of the civilians who at the end of the day are the people they're trying to protect. So like that was really nice, and more so than any other movie, and I don't know why. I was like watching the movie, it reminded me of Kick Ass, where he's just like some scrappy guy. He's just trying his best to save just regular everyday people, and then people like clap for him and cheer him on. I don't know. And it's happened in other movies too, in like Spider Man, like the Raimi Spider Mans and whatever. But just reminded me of that. But yeah, Red Guardian. Red Guardian's a good one. He's funny and he's a good time.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the Raimi Spider-Mans because as I was explaining like how I love hero scenes, I always think back to the montage in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. That's just like one of my favorite scenes in the movie where he's just going around and like he reveals himself to New York for the first time and he's just like saving people. I love that scene.
Yeah, that's a really great one. And I think it's like the cool thing about those movies is like New York is kind of like a side character, so it's like you see Spider-Man come through and everyone's like cheering him on, or like there's kind of commentary and stuff like that throughout the movies, and it's just cool, just like the general populace of New York and seeing their thoughts of just Spider-Man.
The commentary definitely helps that scene too. He stinks and I don't like him. Guy with 8 hands. Sounds hot. Oh my god.
Yo, you just stole the guy's
Oh, that guy's
pizzas.
pizza. All right, we're getting off topic now. But, speaking of Marvel, speaking of Spider-Man, where do you guys think Marvel is headed?
The Fantastic Four, obviously, because we already know that one's
Yeah.
coming out. And that they're somehow connected to the new Avengers or the Thunderbolts at some point in time. So we'll see how that goes. After that, I have no idea. I'm trying to keep as open as mind as possible for the MCU, so I can always be pleasantly surprised.
Definitely Blade, but for real this time, for
Oh,
sure, for sure.
yeah, Blade, yeah, for sure. Blade, because they mentioned in Deadpool and Wolverine that there's like an anchor being in each universe. Blade is definitely the anchor being for the the MCU.
They should go back to that Void world. I don't remember the name of it, but the one from Loki, and do the same thing they did with Gambit, but with Blade, with Mahershala Ali Blade, and be like, yeah, some people say I was born here.
Yeah, if Blade were to enter the Void in like Sentry's Void in this movie, it would just be a copy of the Blade script.
Mahershala Ali throwing it on the floor,
Yeah,
calling Kevin Feige, like,
exactly.
what is this garbage?
I feel bad for saying that though, because I feel bad for Mahershala Ali, but
Oh
still,
my
like
god.
Marvel did this to themselves.
What a like, not to get off on this tangent. I'm sorry, but like what a monumental waste of such a like one of the greatest talents of our time for like 10 years almost. Ah, god. I don't know. How could you not how could it be so hard to make one Blade movie?
I have no idea, dude.
I just hope that if they're going to step away from Blade that they at least do a Midnight Suns movie and then maybe do a Blade because they better not just completely go past doing Blade in the MCU with Mahershala Ali. But whatever, as long as whatever they end up doing with him ends up being really good, I guess that's what matters in the end, if nothing else. But what a waste. But anywho, to actually answer the question, I mean, yeah, Miranda's right. Fantastic Four, and then leading directly into Doomsday, which then leads directly into Secret Wars, which should be interesting. But crazy prediction, not super crazy, but crazy prediction. I'm gonna assume that after this, they're gonna put a heavy emphasis on the mutants and doing a bunch of like X-Men related stories and X-Men cameos in other movies and other mutants coming up in whatever, which could lead to like a whole new chapter and really compelling storytelling because a lot of the X-Men stuff is really compelling. They're just between the characters and their storylines and everything could potentially rival the Infinity Saga if done right, but they actually have to kind of know what they're doing and kind of lightly at least plan out the bones of what they want to do. But I guess we'll find out. I just hope that they learn their lesson after Endgame, where they were like, "Well, just throw darts at a wall and see what happens." Hopefully, they don't do that again. And I don't know if they've. It seems like they've lightly been learning their lesson, and you can't just like start making a movie without a plan. So hopefully, they stop doing that and at least have concepts of a plan. But yeah, I don't know. That's my guesstimate of where Marvel's headed. But what about you, Dan? What do you think?
Well, I think the obvious answer here is that Marvel is headed towards Morbius 2. I mean,
Electric Boogaloo.
yeah, I mean, am I wrong? Morbius 2, Madam Web 2, the Sonyverse will live on. I'm just kidding.
That's how you get Blade. You do Morbius. Morbius v Blade.
Hey, yeah. I mean, he's a vampire and all, but no. In all seriousness, I mean, we gave a spoiler warning at the beginning of the episode. So like the big end credits reveal is the Fantastic Four because like that's the next movie. But the interesting thing about the Fantastic Four is they're not in the main MCU timeline, or I guess the sacred timeline as Loki described it. They're not in the sacred timeline. They're from like a different dimension, which by the way, not to go too off topic, but I really like the style of the new Fantastic Four movie. Like just seeing the trailers, I like the whole retro futurism, like 60s aesthetic that they got going for that. And I really like the dynamic that it seems like the Fantastic Four are going to have with each other. Like they seem more like a family than they do a team. Not to go all Fast and Furious, but like I really like the aesthetic for that movie, and I'm very much looking forward to it, despite the fact that it might take away from some of Superman's box office performance. But I don't care. Good superhero movies all around. You'll love to see it. So, but yeah. Obviously, yeah, the Fantastic Four is going to be the next big step. But what I'm curious about is how is the Fantastic Four going to get there? And obviously, we're going to see that in the Fantastic Four movie. Would it be too much to say that maybe Galactus eats the Earth of that universe and that's why they have to escape? That would be interesting. I don't know if they would actually go that route, but like, how are you going to permanently sift the Fantastic Four into the main MCU if they have a dimension to go back home to? So it'll be really interesting to see what they come up with there. And like, that brings up a whole nother question. Like, okay, so the Fantastic Four are from a different dimension. So is there even a like, do those characters even exist in the sacred timeline then? Like, is there a Reed Richards? Is there a Johnny Storm? Is there a Ben Grimm, Susan Storm in the sacred timeline? I don't know. So that brings up an interesting idea.
Yeah, and on that note, I didn't really think about this, but I mean, yeah, I almost feel like having them at the end of this movie kind of spoils their movie because it's like, yeah, sure, it doesn't necessarily mean that Galactus wins, but like you said, I mean, why else would they be leaving their whole universe and going to a different Earth if not because like they fail and Galactus wins, Like maybe not, but it's like, well, why else would they, why else would they do that? But also, assuming that does happen, it's like, well, way to go, Marvel. Why did you just spoil how your next movie ends right before it comes out? What? I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Well, it's funny though because like this really is not that big of a deal, but it was really funny because I didn't know what the end credits scene for Thunderbolts was gonna be. So like we're all sitting at the credits, and then we see like the Fantastic Four theme get a movie credit, and we're all thinking, when did the Fantastic Four theme show up? Like that never showed up, and it's like, oh, that's probably the after credit scene. And sure enough, it was the after credit scene. So it's like Marvel inadvertently spoiled their own after credit scene in the credits.
You're spoiling the spoilers for the future movie.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you think about it, it's really ridiculous and really not that big of a deal or anything to even complain about. But I just think it's kind of funny.
We're gonna be like Charlie Day when he's in It's Always Sunny with the crazy like string board.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what does this mean?
But I will say that I really do think, and they even talked about it in the Thunderbolts end credit scene. Marvel's headed towards just this big, like, galactic event, and people are talking about Battle World, I think it's called, and that's probably what's going to happen with like Secret Wars and whatnot. But I really do think Marvel's just headed towards this big, like, cosmic event, and whether Secret Wars is going to result in a soft reboot like many people think it's going to. I don't know. We'll have to see. But that's where it's headed towards. I will say I'm probably looking forward more to Secret Wars than I am Doomsday because I don't know, like Doomsday is going to be cool and I'm going to go see it when it comes out. But just bringing back all the Fox characters for more cameos doesn't really excite me that much because I didn't really watch a lot of the Fox X-Men movies. So seeing like James Marsden come back as Cyclops and Patrick Stewart come back as Professor X and all these other like Fox movie characters returning. I don't really care about that. I'm sorry. I know there's lots of people out there that do and are getting excited for that, but I don't. I don't care about the Fox movies. So I'm not really that like if that's the main marketing point for Doomsday and more cameos and whatnot, oh, we're gonna do more nostalgia bait and more cameos. Like, I mean, cool, but like that doesn't really excite me at all. So we'll have to see. And I'm really interested to see if they are going to stick with RDJ as Doctor Doom because if they do, that is terrible casting. Like, I truly do not believe RDJ is going to be the Doctor Doom. I think he's going to be a variant and like the actual Doctor Doom is going to show up later. But if that is the case and RDJ is the actual Doctor Doom, that's terrible casting. But yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. The future for Marvel is exciting, but like some of the ideas they're going to have to do, it'll be interesting to see how they implement them. And it could either be cool, it could either be really cool, or it could either be like really bad. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Couldn't agree more on a lot of those things you got to towards the end. Have not been a fan of RDJ being cast as Doctor Doom, and still am not. And I also agree that's partly why I'm mainly looking forward to Doomsday just to see what they do, like how they explain everything and what they do. It's really just like I just want to know why or like what's going on, what are they doing, how are they building up this event that's coming up out of nowhere that's, they just had to switch to because they canceled King Dynasty. But yeah, I really really hope that they don't keep him as the main Doom, or yeah, the main Doctor Doom, because just terrible idea. Like, okay, like right now we're in the multiverse saga, like there's all these variants, like, okay, let's do that. Let's do that play on this. Let's not have him stay as Doctor Doom. Because it might work for one movie. I don't like, it's not to say that he's not a talented enough performer that he can't play the role, but like that's not the point. There's just so much with Doctor Doom. And I also just hope that they don't do like the Thanos thing where, like, I mean, Thanos at least technically was built up over like a decade, even though it was basically nothing except for like little tiny cameos where they were like, hey, this guy still exists. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, now he's like the main character of the next Avengers movie. But like they literally have not built up Doom at all, and I hope that they don't just rush through Doctor Doom as like a main antagonist and like a big character in the MCU just because like, oh well, we don't know what to do after we decided to skip on Kang. So screw it, let's just do Doctor Doom and get it over with and then move on. Like, I hope they don't do that and they keep him as a character. They just hope that they use a different prime version that's not RDJ. But yeah, and then as well as all like how you're talking about all the different X-Men cameos. I mean, yeah, I don't care. And my other thing too is like I wish it was like a happy medium of like doing some characters from the original Fox movies, doing some of the characters from the newer Fox movies, like the one like the First Class people and beyond, like doing a mix of both casts. It's a little annoying. Like I get that they aren't as highly regarded as like the other original cast, but like I don't know why. Like they were still, I would say that the main three at minimum deserve to be there just as much. I mean, again, maybe they don't want to be. I don't know, but like James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Jennifer Lawrence, all really really great, and they all did a really great job as much as they could in all the movies they were in. So it's kind of annoying that they're just completely ignoring those movies and just only focusing on the original X-Men movies. And then of course you gotta have freaking Gambit, Channing Tatum Gambit. That's like, part of me is like, cool, he's been wanting to be this role for so long and he finally got a chance with Deadpool and Wolverine, and that's cool. It's exciting. It's cool to see someone who had this dream have its, literally come to life in front of you, and it's like that's really cool. They wanted that for so long, good for them. At the same time, too, it's like I'm not a fan of that interpretation of the character, and I hope that he doesn't just become the main MCU Gambit. Please
Woo!
don't
I'm about to
do
make a
it.
name for myself here.
Yeah, it's funny, but like we don't have to do it. I don't know, man. I honestly think that what will happen is at the end of Secret Wars, which like kind of won't make sense because Doctor Strange. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna somehow try to speed run Doctor Strange 3 before that, but I'm pretty sure that movie is supposed to deal with incursion. So unless they just completely skip making that movie and just like say that, oh yeah, it was an off-screen adventure and then move on, which I mean, at this point, it wouldn't surprise me. But like that one's supposed to be dealing with incursions, and I feel like what's going to happen with Secret Wars is that it's going to be dealing with like all these incursions and like Battle World and how all these heroes are coming from all these different universes and stuff like that. And then at the end of all of that, you're basically going to get like a squished down timeline where it's like all these different characters and heroes from these other universes just end up in the same universe, and like that becomes the MCU Prime. And that's not like a super uncommon theory. I know a lot of people have been saying that as well, but that would explain how the Fantastic Four gets to stay in the main MCU timeline, and that explains how maybe the X-Men get there. Maybe they're from a different timeline that we haven't seen yet, and like that way we'll get new X-Men and not just the same freaking Fox X-Men. Again, nothing against them necessarily, but to Dan's point, I'm also getting kind of sick and tired of the constant nostalgia baiting. It's like, okay, we get it. Let's move on. We don't need to keep rehashing the same versions of the same characters. It's time to grow. It's time to move on. It's time to introduce new versions of these characters that can be more faithful and all that. And again, those movies have their place, they were essential to the modern comic book movie, but like I'm definitely a fan of the MCU doing their own versions of things, and I can still appreciate the things that came before, but I also want to see new stories with new versions of these characters, not just Hugh Jackman till he's 90. Ha 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 ha. So yeah, sorry for the rant, but yeah, I think I'm in like the same boat as you, Dan, for the most part on everything. So hopefully they nail it. But I guess we'll find out. And I also guess we'll find out what other movies they squeeze in between the two Avengers movies. I still kind of feel like they should make Secret Wars a part two movie, like a two-parter movie. I know technically Doomsday and Secret Wars are already like a part one and part two because they're going to be directly connected. But I feel like like everything they're trying to tackle in Secret Wars is just so much that they should maybe split it up into two movies, and that way they also have time to tell stories about all of this stuff as it's going on the side. Like if they are going to try to do Doctor Strange 3 after all and tell that story with Doctor Strange and Clea, then maybe they can do it in between the two movies so that way it still kind of makes sense. But who's to say? I'm just me. Who am I? I'm no one. So it doesn't matter.
I mean, yeah, that's all we can really hope for is that they do end up nailing this in execution and that these movies turn out great. But we'll just have to see because I have a good feeling about Fantastic Four. I think that's going to be a good movie. And it would suck to see Marvel gain some good momentum with like Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four and then to slide back down again if like Doomsday doesn't end up being as good as we hoped it would be. So, but yeah, all we can do is wait and see at this point.
On that note, I think it's time for ratings. So, Udi, what would you give this movie out of 5?
Um, Out of 5 stars, I am at a 4 out of 5 with Thunderbolts. I think that it's really nice to see the MCU step up in this way, to have taken the time to be like, hey, yeah, we're not really sure what we're doing. Let's take it like a moment and just do something. Let's actually experiment a little bit and try something a little different. Not to say this isn't commentary on anyone that's worked on any previous MCU movie, but like let's allow someone to actually tell the story and have thematic content and like just use our world and our characters to do that, and I think it was done to great effect here. This is, I believe, the creative team behind the hit Netflix show Beef, which I have not watched. Unfortunately, I really need to watch that. But that's also why Steven Yeun was originally attached to play Sentry, because they were all working together, and then unfortunately didn't work out. But yeah, as we talked about before, the thematic content was, again, not super mind blowing, but I think it was well done here with all the visual motifs and all of that. And the cinematography was, a big step up from a lot of the majority of the MCU. The performances were great. The characters were fun. And it was just nice to see something different. It wasn't just the heroes beating up the bad guys and then boom, it's over. Like, that's it. Nothing really changes. And that, it was nice to, especially after, because we didn't talk about it, but after Brave New World being a little underwhelming, to have something like this that's trying something new. And yeah, so 4 out of 5 for me with Thunderbolts. But what about you, Dan?
Yeah, this was an easy 4 out of 5 for me. I really, like I said, when I first saw this movie, I might have been teetering on like a 3.5 because I did feel at the time that it was a little too jokey. Like I felt like there was someone was cracking a joke like every couple of minutes, which I mean, is fine and all, but for some reason, just with this movie in particular, I just felt like I noticed it a lot. But like I said, the more I thought about this movie, the more I liked it, and yeah, just the way it handled its themes and just how different it felt from the past couple of movies in the MCU. I'd say yeah, easy 4 out of 5 for me. What about you, Miranda?
I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. I think it's a pretty decent Marvel film. Interesting topics, but it did not make me excited for like upcoming MCU things, mainly because of the topic. It's a little more on the deeper side, a little less on the more fun and joke side. But yeah, the MCU's gonna have to work really hard if they want me to give anything of their movies 4 or 5, because I love Guardians, and that movie, the third one, was a blast and I loved it. So it's competing with that, and unfortunately, this one falls flat when competing with that. But in terms as an individual movie, not being compared to other MCU movies, I thought it was very interesting to watch. I had a pleasant time watching it. It made me think about some, you know, stuff and like a bit about society and how we address loneliness and all of that stuff. So yeah, basically go hang out with your friends, find a community. They're gonna help you with your mental health and just your overall mood. It's good to connect with people. So that like being kind of like the end message was really nice to see. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3, which means the Atomic Lizard's average score for Marvel's Thunderbolts is a 3.666 repeating, which rounds down to a 3.5. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our conversation about Thunderbolts. If you're interested in hearing more, check out our previous episodes. And as always, you can find us on Instagram at Atomic Lizards Pod and on Letterboxd at Atomic_Lizards.